Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ice Cold Takes podcast. I'm your host, Joey DeMeglio, and the regular season is finally about to come to an end. And playoff hockey, the best time of the year, will start next week. Today, I'm joined by Natalina Focarelli to give final grades of the regular season for the Rangers. Thanks for joining me, Natalina. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me again. This is one of my favorite podcasts to come on. I feel like we always go off on long tangents
I
that
yeah,
interesting. But I'm
I
doing well. How are you?
I appreciate. Thank you. I'm doing well. How is life after Ryan Strome treating you this year?
It's not as hard. It's not as hard as I thought it would be. I love him, but I always have like a signature guy. Like it started out with Del Zotto, and then it moved. Who did it move to there? I had my VC jersey, so I was so happy that he came back. I feel like it kind of like cushioned the blow a little bit with Strom because he was always like my I have like a random favorite player like throughout their cycle being on the Rangers, and then it was Shea, and before that it was Del Zotto to Brassard. So that was tough when that whole thing happened. But then obviously getting Mika wasn't too bad, so I think that was okay. But I'm doing all right. I haven't and someone like Trocheck coming in, you can't really complain. So um, I still am sticking to the fact that Ryan Strome was not the problem and never was the problem. But having Trocheck, it elevates the team completely, and he's played amazing. So that helps too.
Yeah, I'll say that, Strom wasn't horrible. I didn't hate him. Just Trocheck is just so damn good this year. Like he's
Yes.
great. He's great. He's been worth every single penny of the contract. So like
Yeah.
Strom
I
got 5 million and Trocheck got like 5.6. So
no,
you spend
definitely.
the extra.
It's funny too because every time I mention Strom or something like after he left or just saying defending him still in some way, it's always like, well, you hate Trocheck and how could you even compare the two? And I'm like, it's not. They're not comparable. No one's talking about Trocheck. If you look at like my Twitter or whatever, like I love Trocheck. I think he's a beast, and his face-offs alone are enough to make him worth his
Yeah.
contract. But I'm like, it's not about comparing the two. It's just like, hi everybody, like Strom isn't the biggest problem that you were making him out to be, but in comparison, no, of course Trocheck elevates the team, but that's what they were looking for over the summer, and they got what they needed. So
Yeah, he was certainly one of the best players for the Rangers this year. The Rangers had a lot of performers this year. I mean, we could talk about about grades and stuff. We'll get into that, but I mean, I guess to start everything, the biggest thing is like the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award. So that around this time of year, the Rangers always give out the team awards, and that's the biggest one, the Extra Effort Award. I always look forward to seeing who's going to win it. Last year, it was Kreider. This year, I thought it was going to be Jacob Trouba for the helmet toss thing, but it was Lindgren. It was Ryan Lindgren, and you know what? You cannot go wrong with that. I think that is a excellent choice for the extra effort award. And you know the he said it best. Like he's the heart and soul of the building. He really is. Like the Rangers do so much better when he's on the ice. They did pretty well when he was injured, like this recent stretch, but I mean, it's just not the same when he's out of the lineup.
no, for sure. I literally said to before when I was watching the game with my dad, I was like, they need to do some type of Ryan Lindgren theory, like some type of research, because their team is significantly different. Like even Fox, as incredible as he is on his own, he just is a little bit different. Like you just see
Yeah.
how much Lindgren complements Fox. And I think Truba too. I was someone who was like, I think it should be Mika or Kreider. And I think that's just because for captain, they've been there the longest, and they, in my opinion, they had done the most. But obviously we don't know better than the locker room, and then we kind of saw when Truba got the C, it means so much to him. He says all the time to just play for the Rangers, for him and his family, his wife. But then the way that he just came out and was the captain, there's no other captain. But I think it also, people kind of don't talk about how it lets Mika do what he does without that extra pressure. Like we kind of forget, like when you're the captain of the New York Rangers, you have to make those big plays and you have to make those game changing. And Mika doesn't play like that. He's like a quiet, like humble warrior, but he does everything. But
Yep.
he doesn't have to deal with all the extra this, extra that, extra, because he has Truba who does it so well. So I think for me, extra effort, it could have went. I was Truba, I was Mika, because extra effort. I mean, he does everything that you could imagine. But in the end, I voted for Lindgren. So I think that no one was surprised. But to even have multiple guys, and the Rangers always do every year, but to have multiple guys that could have fit the bill so well, I think it just shows that they're really going in the right direction. So they kind of all bought in this year on giving that extra effort. Even a guy like VC, like, is VC going to get the extra effort award? It is a big deal, so probably not this year. But people look past him, and it's like what he did for that fourth line. It was, the definition of extra effort. So it really could have been anyone, but I think in the end, it was and always was Ryan Lindgren.
Yeah, there were a lot of great choices. I think VZ would have been a good choice too. If you go back in time, I mean, talk about fourth liners winning that thing. Brandon Pruss won it in 2011. I remember that. He had a great year that season. VZ could have won it this year, but I mean Lindgren getting it, it makes a lot of sense. And he could win it a few times in his career if he stays on the Rangers. Like if he could win it next year too. Like he is that kind of player. He blocks every single shot. He Did you see what he said at the end of the last game? He got hit in the face with the puck and he's like, "Oh, it grazed me." It clearly got like his entire face. He's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I think it just grazed me. I'm okay."
I tweeted something like it's very poetic that he gets hit in the face and he's gushing blood, and then he comes back on the bench 5 minutes later,
Yeah,
um, in a game that, again, like the Rangers, they need to win these games, quote unquote, for standing. But at the end of the day, they are games that they could kind of just say, okay, we're in third. That's where we're kind of sitting. Let's see how it plays out with the Canes and with the Devils. But then he's like throwing his face in front of a puck, and it's like, well, there you go. There's our guy. If he's not bleeding, then he's not out there, kind of thing. That's kind of the underlying thing with the Ranger fans. So
yeah, right. It's the games don't matter as much. These ones, like you listen to what Heedle said. He was saying if we're gonna be a good team, like we have to be able to beat anybody anywhere. So like the standings, it seems like the Rangers aren't as concerned with you know the results of these last couple games as they are like with their own performance and staying healthy and stuff like that. And Lindgren doing it on basically meaningless game is just a testament to the kind of player that he is. And you brought up Zibanejad. He ended up winning team MVP. I believe that's voted on by the players.
mhm.
And I mean, 90-point year for Zibanejad. It's career high. If he gets a goal tonight, he'll have 40. So we'll be rooting for that. I'm sure everybody will be trying to pass to him. His line mates for sure. Kreider's definitely going to be will not stop passing it until he gets 40 because that's what Zibanejad did to Kreider last year for his 50th goal. So I mean, any objections to the team MVP? Like maybe Panarin.
Absolutely not. I think Mika is the best trade in recent Rangers history and in years. I feel like and again, when I was younger, I don't really know all the ins and outs of the 1994, and I know they traded for big players for that year to go win the cup and all that stuff. But even when I talk to my dad, who's been following them, that whole older generation, I can't think of a better trade in Rangers history, and one of like the best trades in probably recent NHL times, like in modern times of NHL, because no one I don't think anyone thought that Mika was going to be what he is now. There are some guys that probably might have followed him closely for whatever reason, or they were like, "You got a good player in Mika," but to trade him like that, one for one for one of my favorites, but to trade him like that, we were kind of just like, okay, here's this guy, like, what's he gonna do? And to become what he's become, he is the true MVP of the team. I feel like he just does everything on the power play, on the kill, getting back on defense, just passing the puck to the way that he just, like you said, complimented Kreider last year. Kreider doesn't hit 50 without Mika. It's just not.
Of course.
It doesn't happen, and it just he does everything, and then you just see again to that quiet humbleness. I feel like he is so like happy to be there, so confident in what he's doing, and it just like shows. Like the younger players just look to him and look to Kreider, like at the end of every game when they're the last two that come off the ice, and I feel like just the way he's complimented. You brought in. I think the biggest thing about Mika for me is you brought in Artemi Panarin. You brought in Tarasenko. You brought in Patrick freaking Kane. And everyone's like, these are the big names of the New York Rangers. Like they are, obviously. And it could have been so easy for Mika to get rattled by it, to kind of sit back and say, let these guys do their thing and take over a bit. but he said, "No, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, keep elevating my game, keep scoring, keep getting assists, keep doing everything that I do, and being able to complement all these different superstars that were brought to the Rangers." I feel like that is something that just makes him again the MVP, because it could have been really easy for him to be like, let me just, take a step back, or where I'm rattled. I don't know how to play with these guys. Every guy that comes in, it looks like Mika's played with them for 10 years. So
Mhm.
it's like, I think that's just the magic of Mika. Mika March, Mika May, Mika April, whatever you call it. It's like all year long. So definitely my vote for the MVP too.
Mika 12 months of the
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that you brought up, how Kane like comes in and Tarasenko comes in. Like those guys, instead of being like star players on the team, they are basically the depth players. Like they're the supporting cast of this. The core is already established. The core is like Zibanejad, Kreider, Fox, Panarin, right? And then you add Tarasenko and Trocheck and Patrick Kane, and those guys are like taking a back seat to them. Like you listen to what Kane is saying in like post game pressers. It's like he's giving all this praise to Hedo, Lafreniere, and Kako. Like I got to spend some time with these guys. Like these guys are awesome. Like they're pulling a lot of the weight here. Zibanejad's such a great player. Even like Tarasenko, like he's so happy to be playing with Panarin, and that only adds to the team chemistry dynamic. So I mean, having guys like Tarasenko and Kane, to your point, it's like they're the supporting cast, and
Yeah.
which is insane,
It,
insane. Like you would never think that.
yeah, like you had mentioned for the kids could have said, okay, well the stars are here, like and Lafreniere. Like when I was younger, I was like, Mia Hamm is my role model. Like I was a soccer player, and then it's like now he's playing next to his childhood star, and Kane saying those things about him, and then the kid line's still one of the best lines on the Rangers, and they're still producing, and it's like you bring these guys in, and I feel like too it was a nice thing for Ranger fans to see, because as New York Rangers, and we have all this money and we play at MSG, like we love the names. We're always like, we need a star, we need a star. And sometimes we forget, like Zibanejad is a star. I don't care
Mhm.
what anyone says. He's the most, to me, I've said it multiple times, the most underrated player in the NHL, in my opinion. I don't care what anyone says. I think he's the most underrated, because he's not just the best player on the Rangers or the MVP or a great all around player. He's a star. He's not a superstar, right, per se, but he's a star. And I don't think that he gets the credit for it. But I think it's just nice for Ranger fans to see, okay, we got the big names. We got the biggest names you could have got, minus, the untouchables, like Connor McDavid. Like, you're not bringing him in anytime soon.
Mhm.
So you bring in Kane, you bring Tarasenko, you bring in, like you said, Trocheck is a big name. I remember hearing Trocheck and not really following him.
Yeah.
This Trocheck guy, I hear about him all the time. And then when we brought him in, it was like the biggest deal. And nobody in their wildest dreams thought, well, here comes Tarasenko. And then in the wildest of all dreams, being like, no, but we're not done. We're bringing in Kane. So I feel like it just, like you said, that they complement the team so much. And it's just, I think in the playoffs, we're going to see those guys and be like, oh, that's why they have Stanley Cups.
Mm.
And that's what they're going to bring. Because I think Heedle turned it on, in the playoffs. I think our guys did really good for a lot of them, that it was like their first time really in a playoff and going that deep in the playoffs. But having guys like Kane and Tarasenko, it's going to be that's when we're really going to see them kind of shift and be like, okay, this is why they're the names that they are.
Yeah, great point. I agree with you there. And we could shift to like the grades for the team. We're on the subject of offense, like all of our forwards. Like to me, if I had to give a grade, like a regular school grade system, offense has to be an A. Like
Yeah.
this is the best built like forward core I've ever seen the Rangers put together. Like in all my years, like better than the 14-15 President's Trophy winning team, better than the team that went to the finals in 13-14, better than like the Eastern Conference leading 2011-2012 team. Like these are like unbelievable players all on the same roster. There's so much depth of the team. There's 5 players on the team with over 50 points and almost 9 players with 40 points.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's insane. Like Kako, Lafreniere, Hedo, the fact that they're pulling their own weight is so important. Like last year they had like 20, 25 points. Now they bumped that up like 15 points and now they got 40 basically each of them. Hedo's got 45. So it's a dangerous team, like from top to bottom on from the forward side. What would you get if you had to give a grade for offense? Like, what would you give them?
I agree. I give him an A, and I think the main points to that are Mika could have again had a drop off year. He just is the best he's ever been. Kreider, everyone talks about Kreider 50. He'll never do it again. His contract sucks. What is he doing right now? He's putting in goals. What is he at? 40? Is he at he hit 40?
He
Yeah, he's got
has less than 40, but he's got like over 35. He's
it's gotta be
got 36.
830 something in there, whatever it is. But again, even for him, he's not on no 20 goal season like everyone projected. He would have some big slump after his 50 goal season. But then obviously you have guys like Panarin, you have the Kane and Tarasenko that are doing what they're supposed to do. But I think what really contributes to it is our kid line and our fourth line, because this is the best fourth line I think the Rangers have had in so many years. I was laughing with my dad watching games and just talking about these players that we've seen come through the Rangers fourth line, and like, where are they? We're like, who is this guy? How is he on this team? What, we're never gonna win a cup with this guy. And like, you don't appreciate the fourth line until you have a really good fourth line. I think
Yeah.
you don't realize, because you're like, our team is so top heavy, we have all these guys, but then we'd have players, I don't even remember their names, like just shoved into the fourth line, like thrown in there. Not saying we haven't had some great fourth liners over the years, but never a fourth line like this. To get VZ, I think, was so smart and such just a good little addition that no one really ever thought of. I don't think anyone in Rangers fan base had talked about that before it happened. Goodrow being able to move down and play that fourth line role. He's a guy I was again laughing. I was getting yelled at by my brother and my dad because I was like, Goudreau's like boring me a little bit recently. What do you mean? He does everything. He does everything. He does everything. And I was like, I know. I just want him to score again because like I miss him scoring. But he was able to just go down into that role, and he's incredible, but he just plays a different role now. So I'm like, oh, remember when Goodrow was like up there scoring goals, and now he plays like this dominating fourth role line. But and then the kid line, it's interesting because I always saw the kids as plugins. Like, you have your main guys. Who's going to throw into the Kreider Zibanejad line? Who are we going to throw into the Panarin, Trocheck, or Strome at the time? Like, who are we going to plug in? Where does Kravtsov fit into the puzzle? So it was always about fitting them in with the big or the older guys that we had. And then it completely changed. It just became, no, they're not plugins anymore. They are the established line of the three of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like having them, instead of, throwing Hedel. Hedel can play wing. Let's throw Hedel in the center, second line center. Like, let's throw these guys where are they going to go? I remember getting Trocheck, and a lot of people talked about, like, that's it for Hedel. He can't, he's done going to the second line, because you never thought that he was going to be able to play third line the way that he does. But having that third line of the kids and saying, like, they're not plugins, they're actually their own line, and their chemistry and everything that they've built together, knowing how young they are, just for the years and years and years to come, that we hopefully keep that line together, which I don't see them breaking up for whatever reason. But I think that just, they found the identity that we were always like, because again, even the line changes, we'd all be yelling at the coach, like, why are you shifting these lines around when they were struggling? It's funny because I'm like, how is this the same team that we had in like December and back in like the winter, when we were like, what happened to the Rangers? Like, they fell apart. They went all the way through to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then they completely had a terrible year. They're never going to make the playoffs. They're never this. And then a week before playoffs, they're fighting for first place, and they're neck and neck, with the Canes and the Devils for first in the Metro, and now they're locked into
Mm-hmm.
playoffs. So I think just finding where they fit, like you said, they had all these names, and that's why it was so frustrating. Like, on paper, we'd be like, they have the names, where are they going? And now I just think that they found where they're going, and then, like we said, Tarasenko and Kane almost became like, okay, now where do we just place them in the puzzle? So I think that is what completely shifted the team, just finding where they belong on offense in that third and fourth line. Because Panarin and Kreider always had it. Panarin always has it. But where do those other guys, fit? So I think that they found it, hopefully.
Once Gallant put the kids back together, it became so obvious that needed to be a thing, because they're so damn good together.
Yeah.
Like, you go back to around the New Year, right, when they were together, and then right at the All-Star break, they were put back together again, and ever since then, it's been a tear. They've been on a tear. Like, they just play so much better together. So rather than them being pieces of the puzzle, they're their own section of the
Mm-hmm.
puzzle. So and and to that, like what you said, Kane and Tarasenko become pieces to the puzzle,
Mhm.
not the kids, right? So and they're all pulling their own weight too. It's just,
Yeah.
they don't take a back seat. I like what you said about that. They're not taking a back seat. They're playing the way that they need to play. If it comes down to like, making a tweak here and there, like, yeah, maybe you do split them up in the playoffs, but to they got us to this point, right?
Yeah.
For like their play is what helped the Rangers, be in that conversation for first place in the division, be in the conversation for getting the second seed in the Metro, competing with the Devils. You know what I mean? Like they have done uh more than enough to help this team out, and
Yeah.
hopefully it continues. Hopefully they play the way that they played last year in the playoffs this year, but like even better, like incorporating the elements that made them so good in the regular season this year into the playoffs.
Yeah.
They're physical players too. They're not like guys that
Mm-mm.
shy away from body checks. Lafreniere will throw the body. Kako will throw a reverse hit here and there, and Hedo's a great skater. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't get run over easily,
No,
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's it'll be exciting to see how they play again. I'm very excited to see them play again in the playoffs. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see who they match up against.
Yeah, I think it's funny too because they're a first overall pick, a second overall pick, and a high first rounder. So to think like, oh, these guys came out of nowhere, like it's just so funny. It's like no, they just developed in a very weird COVID pandemic-y few seasons, and now they're playing like I just love watching Laugh. Like he looks like he's been playing for the Rangers for 15 years.
Mm.
He is so funny, so just bantering with these like guys who are like his idols, and he's just always goofy and like and those little things like I think they just once he got comfortable and he was like, oh, they trust me on my own line with my own guys that can play the way that complements me instead of just what can I do for Kreider or what can I do for Panarin. I think it shows too in the way that they play, like their confidence as these young guys. They look like an established line of 26-year-olds and they're not. So I think
Hmm.
that that's exciting for the future too, regardless of even what happens this year.
Yeah, the path to get to where they are, it might not have been the greatest, but I'm just happy that they're here now.
Yeah.
So I I'll take that. I'll take that. Moving on to defense. Um, the defense for me, the season started off horribly for some of the defensemen. Truba for sure. I mean, like Hayek too. Even though he didn't play that many games, it's gotten better since December, but still lots of turnovers and long shifts against them. Um, I give them a B minus.
I agree. I agree. I think that that's fair. I think at times you could have slapped like a D, like it, like
Oh yeah, yeah,
for like overall season, I would say it averages out to a B minus. But it's so funny too because the Rangers were such a like defensive powerhouse for so long, like they're just for years, and then
yeah.
when we see them struggle, it's like, what did you mean we gave up 2 goals? Like, what do you mean we gave up 3 goals? Because we were so used to 1-0 games, 2-1 games, like, and I mean that obviously plays a part that Lundqvist and Shesterkin are our goalies, not to forget about them, but um definitely a lot of lapses. I think Keandre Miller had a great season overall, but he had a few where you like stretches where you were like, what's going on with him? Truba, I've said it, probably you could pull up tweets before that are like, does Truba know how to play defense? But again, he brings on his other role of being a captain and doing everything that he needs to do on that end. So you're like, okay, Truba, you get a little bit of a pass. Fox is still Fox. Lindgren was hurt, over time, but I think overall they've kind of gotten it together. I think Schneider again is just like a quiet. I called him last year at the end of the playoffs. Like he's just a warrior and he's so good. And he might not get as much recognition because you have guys like Fox and you have guys like Miller and who can go, from one end of the ice to the other end and score a beautiful goal. And then you have Truba who's fighting everyone, throwing hits all the time. But I think Schneider's just such like a poised and beast, and he's always doing what he has to do. Sometimes, again, you're like, what did Schneider just do? But I feel like then it's like out of character for him.
Hmm.
So I agree. I think averaging out, they definitely had stretches where you were like, this team can't play in the playoffs with this defense. But I think that they're going to be okay, especially with Lindgren back. But and guys stepping in when Lindgren was gone, I think that was huge too. Like
Harper, yeah.
Yeah, like Harper, and I laugh at him because I'm like, sometimes again, you're like, what is he doing? And
Yeah.
but then you're like, he's not going to be the guy. Lindgren will be back. He's just doing what he needs to do right now, and I think that's like a good theme for this year. Like when people need to step up, they did. So I'm not really concerned about them in the playoffs, but I guess like you said, we'll see the matchups, and um, they're going to have to clean up some sloppiness for sure, for sure.
Yeah, just Harper was used just to get them there,
Yeah,
and like when the Kane stuff was happening, like he was used just to get them to
yeah,
that point where they could get the trade going,
yep,
right? And to your point about Schneider, I like that you bring him up because I like him. I think he's a good defender. Analytically, he doesn't have the greatest numbers, and to me, I'll give like my reasoning for my opinion on why that is. I think because he's a third pair defenseman and he's playing with Harper most of the time. Like he was doing better with Zach Jones, like analytically, yeah.
yeah,
But as a third pair defenseman, like you're not gonna shut out the opponent every single game, right? Like they're gonna get their chances at some point or another. It's just gonna become. It's more likely that it comes against your third pair because your third pair is not as good as Fox and Lindgren. You know what I mean? Like,
agreed.
so you have like top guys on the other team, running into a brick wall theoretically. Let's just say that, like with Fox and Lindgren on the ice, and then if they get matched up against the third pair, it's like a lot easier for them. Not
Hmm.
that they're playing poorly, they're making good defensive plays, like, Schneider's making good defensive plays. So, like, he'll allow, like, a long shift or 2, but, I mean, positionally, I feel comfortable with him the way he is. Like, I mean, he may not add anything offensively, but I'm comfortable with him as a third pair defenseman, especially going into the future. He's young, and, he's got talent, And,
Sure.
even with Harper too, like, he's a fill-in guy, like I said. So once you move Mikola down, it should strike that bottom pair. Not going to be shut down like as good as the first pair, but I mean a better third pair. So
I
I like Schneider. I think Mikola is doing pretty good.
Yeah, he's big. Nicola, I went to that Flyers Rangers game and I saw him in person. I was like,
Yeah,
he is a big guy.
towering. Yeah,
Really, I was like amazed. I was like, I don't think I have seen a guy this big on like in a Rangers jersey
yeah,
in so long, because they're usually just they're quick and they're small and they're Fox and
nimble.
you know those guys. But to see him, I was like, oh, he's massive.
Yeah, I thought Keandre Miller's reach was huge. This guy, Mikola's reach is through the roof.
Yeah,
Unbelievable. It's crazy.
he
It's
does.
like he stretches his arm out from like the face-off dot and it reaches to the blue line.
Yeah, no, unbelievable. He is.
Yeah, Mikola, I like him as a defenseman. I think that was a key part of that trade. I like that they brought in an extra defenseman. They didn't settle with Harper or call Hayek back up. You know what I mean? Like
Agree.
they upgraded there. So I mean, while it had their rocky start, again, B minus for me.
There.
It it improved throughout the season. Last thing, goaltending. I'll give them a B because same thing with the defense. Like they started off like kind of rough. Halak was not good in the beginning of the year. We remember how he started, but mid-season he picked it up. He became the goalie that he was like for most of his career, just as a backup. And Shesterkin had a rough stretch after the All-Star break. I remember a lot of people were saying Shesterkin's crap, like he's been like this for a long time now. He's not a good goalie, blah blah blah. I'm like, come on, man. Come on. You can't say that. Look,
Just
listen to these stats. Listen to these stats. Since the game he got pulled in Washington on February 25th, 12-3-1 with a 2.00 goals against average, 934 save percentage, and 2 shutouts.
It doesn't surprise me. I think the biggest thing about Shesterkin, and I think it's very similar to Lundqvist in a way, is he holds himself to a higher standard than we even hold him to, and he's a competitor. Like Lundqvist hated losing. Like you read it all over his face, and he didn't lose often, but he hated it, and especially when it was like on him, and you knew, and he knew it was on him that night. And I think I get that same vibe from Shesterkin. Like no one I wasn't worried even a little bit. I remember specifically tweeting during that time right after right after he went to the All-Star, which I just got his jersey and it finally came. So I'll be wearing that today during the game. But he and he had that rough stretch, and I tweeted and I was like, "You're worried in February about the Vezina Trophy winner or Vezina Trophy winner, and you're worried about him in February having a rough stretch, and actually thinking that he's not going to turn it around is absolutely mind blowing." So he didn't surprise me at all. I think obviously it's frustrating when you see a guy who is so good clearly going through it, but I think he always had that same Lundqvist type esque, like, I know, guys, and I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to be better than I ever was, and or better than I've ever been, and everything's going to be okay. So I think that I never once doubted him. I think it's fair to give them like a B, maybe a B plus, just because Shesterkin is so good. I think I would go with and having a good backup goalie, that's a big deal. And he was able to give Shesterkin days off when it was needed, and kind of turned into the Halak that again we've seen him be, especially against the Rangers, in his past. So I think that it's fair. B plus is fair, but I think Shesterkin is going into the playoffs in full Shesterkin form,
Mhm.
and that's the thing that we're again, yeah, in February you're gonna be like, oh, Shesterkin, and other fan bases are gonna be like, oh, we told you Shesterkin this, like, and I'm like, don't post that video of Shesterkin waving goodbye to the Penguins, because it always comes back to bite you.
Mhm.
That video, they love to post it and be like, oh, he spoke too soon, and I'm like, he's gonna be fine. And so I think again, going into the playoffs, having Shesterkin ready to go is a huge piece of the puzzle. And I think he's ready. He's in form now, so I'm not concerned.
Yeah, I never bought into the whole narrative that he's a fluke goaltender. He's way too good to be a fluke goaltender. Like,
So
we
fun.
everybody knew that his stats last year were not replicable. Same deal as Kreider getting 50 goals again. That we know that's not going to happen. The numbers Shesterkin put up last year, no goalie has ever put those up, right? So he's down to earth. He's back down to earth. So like his numbers for this year are pretty solid. I would say. I mean, I had all the faith. I'm with you. I had all the faith in the world that he would make a comeback and improve after that like All-Star break kind of stretch around the trade deadline, and he did. As I laid out with those stats, like he's been good. He stayed healthy, and it's good. The Rangers are going to need him to play the level that he can play at. If he could, maybe bring back some of that magic from last year and make himself even better, that's even better.
I
Even
think
better.
think he's a game. He's like Lundqvist in like that biggest arena, biggest stage. Everything's up for grabs. Like, and he shows up. I don't see him ever not showing up, and he elevates his game to be at where it needs to be when it needs to be there. And I think what's funny too is like the range. We're not used to. I mean, I'm not used to the Rangers scoring so many goals. Like how we talked about their offense. So he also. In the playoffs, it's a little bit different. Everyone tightens up their teams, but like he didn't have to always be the best. Like Lundqvist was like he gave up a goal and you're like, are the Rangers going to score one back? Like, are they going to win the game? And it was they always played a little bit tighter. So when Lundqvist did that here and there, it was like, oh, and like he would go on those little stretches or whatever would happen. But the Rangers are scoring goals, so he didn't have to be, I don't think, as perfect, quote unquote, as he was last year either. So I think that it helps when your team is actually scoring more than 1 or 2 goals a game.
Yeah, this is an offense-focused team, so they could score goals at any given moment. And so if Shesterkin comes up with the saves that he needs to make,
That's
then the Rangers are going to be a dangerous team in the playoffs.
great. Yeah.
And I like that you brought up the wave from Shesterkin on the Penguins. It's so fitting because the Penguins just got knocked out of the playoffs for the first
Oh,
time in 16 seasons. So I mean, I cannot believe that happened.
it is.
Unbelievable.
It's amazing, honestly. I mean, for the sport, of course, I hate Crosby as a rival, but as a player, he's Crosby, and there's
Yeah, of
Malkin,
course.
all of that, and it's not great for the sport when Crosby and Malkin aren't in the playoffs. But it's also just the best thing. I love it so much. I don't care what anyone says, because, like I said, I've told you before, and I said before, like I don't go looking to fight with other teams, on Twitter or on social media. But the number one team that has surpassed the Devils fan base, which is very hard to do for most unbearable fan base in my experience is the Penguins. So not having to deal with them, like honestly, that moment, and you probably saw the video when Panarin scored and we beat the Penguins in Game 7, and I like screamed, and it was on the Rangers posted it or whatever. My brother like trampled over me.
Yeah.
There was just a moment of like, obviously it was like the Rangers are going through, and that was my first thought, and then like my next thought was just like, oh thank God, like I don't have to deal with these flooding of fans from Pittsburgh that are going to be all up in my mention. So not having to deal with them in the playoffs is a very nice weight off my back personally. Um, and again, it just, I don't know. Like for me, yeah, we hate the Devils, but like the Devils haven't been in the playoffs steadily at all for years. It's just, I don't know. Let's see what they can do. Let's see Jack Hughes in the playoffs. Like they try to make themselves this big rival. Like you don't want to play us. You're probably hoping for the Canes to lose. And I'm like, no, like, well, like it's New Jersey versus New York. Like come to play. Like I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it'll, if we play them, it'll turn into us beating them or them beating us. I don't know, but it's just like it's nice to not have to play the Penguins. Like
Mhm.
let's play the Devils. Like for once, like I don't have to deal with Crosby and Malkin and the refs and going to Pittsburgh and playing. Like I don't want it. I don't need it. I will take the Devil. Even if the Devils beat us in the playoffs or whoever beats us in the playoffs, I will take playing that team over Pittsburgh for just one freaking year. Like
Yeah.
give us a year. Like give us a year off. We've had enough. I think we've had, our battles with Pittsburgh enough. So, and the Capitals, it's crazy that, and those big names, those big teams not being there anymore. It's just kind of a new landscape for the Metro
Yeah,
and for the league.
for 1 year at least, Like, I'll come back to, like, the Devils part, but, like, the Penguins missing the playoffs, right? Like, that's just it's so mind-boggling. Like, I always give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, the past 3 years, it's been like, "Alright, the Penguins are older. Is this the year they lose? They still have Crosby and Malkin." There's the
Yeah.
benefit of the doubt there. You
Oh
can't
wait.
count them out. So, even on the other show that I used to that I did, Center Ice, like, I was saying, you know, in February, "Don't count the Penguins or the Capitals out. Don't count the Penguins or the Capitals out." And I'm wrong. I was wrong. First time that all of us have been wrong, like, with the Penguins and the Capitals not making the playoffs. We've always said they're going to make the playoffs, and they did every single year, like, the past 3 years. They stayed on their streaks. Like, they even though it seemed like they didn't have as good of a team, they were getting older. Crosby, Malkin, Ovechkin, like, those guys getting older, right? They're not gonna be as effective. They still had it in them to will their team to the playoffs. But this year, crazy that they neither of the teams, the Capitals or the Penguins, made it to the playoffs. I'm so surprised the Panthers were able to claw their way back, pun intended, uh, and make it to the playoffs.
And thank God they did. I was like, come on, Sabres. Like even when the Sabres, it was like not happening, and
Yeah.
and even when they like beat us, I was like, kind of okay. Like keep. I was like, I'll take the 1 point, even though it's really annoying, because we shouldn't have dropped points against them. But I was like, come on, Sabres. I was like, could you imagine Sabres Panthers over Penguins
Uh,
Islanders? I said I was like, I'll take one. Obviously, I'll take Islanders or Penguins, preferably the Penguins being out. So that it did work out for me, but I was like, could you imagine Sabres Panthers instead of
yeah.
Twins?
I couldn't see the Sabres, even though they went on a tear in the middle of the season, like, they were looking really good. It looks like they've taken this a step forward this year for sure. I still didn't think that they were gonna make the playoffs over Pittsburgh or Washington. And, I mean, going back a couple years, I ripped on Buffalo for not being the greatest organization for developing their forwards and their prospects, but now they're in a great spot. Next year they're going to be dangerous. I will say that. I will fully admit to the Sabres being a good team next year. I think that will happen. I think they're going to make the playoffs next year. This year I thought the Penguins and the Capitals still had it in them.
Yeah,
They didn't, but the Panthers and the Islanders still exist. So, uh, I don't think those 2 teams are gonna go far, the Panthers and the Islanders, but, I I think that they have, like they're in a better spot than the Sabres because, like, their guys have been there, they've done that. Now the Sabres have the experience, of success this year, like, they had a really, really good year. There's a lot to love about this team, and moving into next year, they could be so much better. But I mean, playoff matchups, Devils, Hurricanes. I have to say I'm still scared of the Devils. I think it'll be a good matchup. It'll be a great matchup. What I'm most scared about is like the what it's gonna be like if the Rangers lose to the Devils in the first round. You know what I mean? Like the fans coming into your mentions, like that stuff. Like 2012, like when the Rangers lost to the Devils. I'm not over that. Know what I mean?
Yeah, I
It
think
it stings. It hurts my heart. I love that team. Like that was such a great year. I thought they had it and it didn't happen, you know?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point because it's not. I can't really say matchup wise who I would rather have, and I don't mean that in disrespect. Before everyone attacks me from the Devils fan base of either fan base, they really believe that we are like I want to play the Hurricanes. Like, no, I don't. I mean, do I want to play the Canes or the Devils? Not really. Like, that's not you got to play who you got to play. But I
Right.
always you got to beat the teams to win the cup. So you got to play them at some point. If they're there, you play them, you beat them, or you don't. I think what all Ranger fans can agree with, and even Devils fans can agree with, is that the like you said, the losing stakes are just higher because of the rivalry.
Mhm.
So if you're talking about it in that way of, who do you want to play more because you just don't want to deal with the aftermath of maybe losing, the Canes don't bother me. They don't say anything to me. I mean, they don't do anything to me personally. Devils, um, Kako could score a goal in Montreal, and Hughes could score playing against the Sabres. And somewhere, somehow, there's Devils fans in my mentions like Hughes's goal was better than Kako's tonight, and that's the truth. So and that's where it lies of like I know that I will be even playing them even game 1, 2, 3. If it goes to 7, the Rangers love to go to 7, but so it doesn't really change anything for me, but I totally agree. And I don't think anyone can disagree that obviously the stakes are higher in our own personal lives. Like if
Mhm.
you ask the Rangers, if you ask the organization, if you ask the coaches, I really don't think that they have a team that they don't match up well with. I do think when I watch the Devils play, for some reason the Rangers don't always look the best against them. I don't know if the Devils are that much better in a sense. I don't really follow them enough the way that Devils fans follow the Rangers constantly. But I will say that I agree 100%. Obviously, would you rather lose to the Canes or the Devils? You'd rather lose to the Canes. But I'm thinking let's just beat who we're playing and we don't have to really deal with the aftermath. But I don't know, matchup wise, I don't know. I know the Canes are a little bit banged up, so maybe like any team would kind of rather play them because of any you want to play any team with a guy banged up, obviously, more than a team that's fully there. But I agree. I think it's more about just that anxiety of like if we lose or if we even lose a game, it could be game 2 and it could be 2-1 in triple overtime. The floodgates of red will open and they won't stop until you like mute them all over social media, and then they start off talking about the Rangers and Devils, and then they go into like your personal life and what I look like or what I this or who I, and I'm like, okay, this is where it's kind of like, would I rather not deal with that for 7 games in an aftermath of losing? Obviously, like who wants
Yeah.
to deal with that? But I'm not. I really don't. I really believe that Canes, Devils, Rangers are the teams collectively to beat, and I
Right.
don't. And obviously, the Bruins are their own thing too. But I just think the Bruins over there, and then the rest is the Canes, the Devils, and the Rangers. So I don't know. I think it'll be. What are they all playing tonight? I don't even. I only follow the Rangers really.
Yeah. It's the same. But like the this is good for the league, right? Like
Yeah.
the Rangers, Devils, this rivalry is good for the league. Like I'll tell you why. So the Rangers and the Devils, if they play in the first round, I might look for tickets in Newark. Know what I mean? I'm not gonna go to MSG because it's way too expensive. I don't go to games too often. Like
Yeah.
maybe 3 a year. Like in the past 2, okay, that may be a lot. Okay. So like the past 2 years I've gone to like 3 each, right? But before that, I would never go to a game. Maybe once every 5 years, right? I would go to a Rangers Devils playoff game in Newark over the Rangers playing like the Hurricanes. You know what I mean? Right? So like that rivalry aspect of it, it matters. It matters. Like to the consumers, to the people watching, like, this is good for the league. It's good to have the rivalries and stuff. It generates the revenue and stuff like that. There's narratives and all this stuff. It's fun. It's fun. It's good for the league. Uh, but still, as a fan, I'm gonna be scared as like not playing against the Devils. Like the Rangers, I'm confident the Rangers could beat the Devils. Yes. It's the fact that if they lose is what I'm scared about. That moment when they lose. I don't know if I could stomach that. You know what I mean? Like it's always every time you lose like a big playoff series, it hurts. Like
Well, that
last year, it hurt.
that's how I felt with that's how I felt with the Penguins. There was that under after I had taken so much literally like abuse on Twitter for 7 games and it was like nonstop. It would be like the morning after the game and it would be like the random guy that woke
Uh,
up at 6 a.m. and decided like this is what I'm gonna do today. Like and they would just come at you relentlessly. I remember the big one that they like to use was that one meme of the guy giving a tissue and he's like tissue. So I was like, I can't stomach losing to these people. It was like
yeah.
that. It was less like you lose to that's the funny thing. I'm like, you lose to Crosby, you lose to Malkin in a 7 game series with a few guys who have never on our team who are like Laugh and Heedle and Kako who are young guys. Okay, you're kind of like I can stomach that as a Ranger fan playing against that same Malkin
Yeah.
and Crosby and the refs and the this and the that. But the stomaching of losing to that fan base was something that I was like, I can't do it. I physically
Hmm.
cannot do it. So as soon as we won and I celebrated it, I was so like overwhelmed. I went all in that Twitter and I threw a tissue meme right back at all those all those Twitter accounts that were coming at me for so long. So that was fun, but I agree. I feel like it's the same way. We haven't had Devils Rangers in a long time, and I just don't think that the Devils fans know how to handle being good. That's how I feel.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
they don't. They say things that are like really bizarre and really weird that I wouldn't bring up if I was just watching the Rangers. Like I don't think about the Devils and they take it as such like an
Yeah.
insult. You should think about us. Like you should be scared. Like I'm just watching my team play and you're saying things about the Rangers like that I don't know. I think they tried to compare one guy tweeted something about Jack Hughes' stats versus Kako's stats. As
Yeah.
Ranger fans, we are Kako's season is a win for us.
Yeah.
So you can compare it to Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes had a fantastic season. He's the best player on your team. Kako's not the best player on our team. Jack Hughes isn't playing with Kane. He's not playing with Tarasenko. He's not playing with Panarin. He's not playing with Zibanejad. He's not playing with Kreider. So Jack Hughes has to be incredibly amazing. Kako doesn't have to be there yet at all by any means. He's the third line. He
Yeah.
does exactly what he needs to do. And that's the difference. Like you don't follow the Rangers like that. So you think like you're throwing some dig at us when we're like, thank you for mentioning like Kako's amazing like scoring this year. I don't know why you had to compare it to Jack Hughes, who we give that to you. He went first. We didn't pick Kako over Hughes. That's another thing. They like think like, oh look, see, like we have Jack Hughes and look what he did, Ranger fans. I'm like, yeah, if we were first round, if we were the first overall pick, we would have picked him too. Like, so it's just very bizarre. But then they like want to compare. Like, I think I tweeted once we were playing. I don't know who we were playing, but I said something like, it seems like Jack Hughes might have paid off the refs in this one because we would have tied the we would have tied the Devils in the standings if we beat this team. Like to me, those are like that's a joke. Yes, we can all I think be adults and understand sarcasm and a joke enough to know that I don't actually believe Jack Hughes is off somewhere paying the referees. Like that's so it's like I love the banter. I love the Devils Rangers rivalry. I'm happy it's back. Welcome to the league, Devils. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Welcome back because we've been here. I don't care how that sounds. We've been here, and if you beat us, okay, like you're back, and if we beat you, like okay, the rivalry goes. But like you said, like we want the rivalry. Like, do I want to lose to the Devils and deal with their fans? No, and they don't want the same thing as us. But like for the league and for longtime fans and people that are involved in the rivalry, it's all good. It's just it's bizarre. It's almost like they're mad that we're here. Like we're not mad, and they want us to be mad that they've arrived. But like we're not mad that you've arrived. We've been waiting for you
Hmm.
for a long time. So welcome back to the playoffs. Like and if we play them, we play them. It's like I don't know. I don't know. It's very weird. I think that year's odd.
Yeah, so like the Hughes to Kako comparisons, to me, it's like at this point you got to stop comparing the two. Like I know they're from the same draft class, and Hughes is clearly at a higher stage than Kako is. I'm not gonna pretend and say like he's not. Like Hughes is an elite player. Kako's a third line scorer. For their teams, like they fill out different roles. Like you shouldn't be comparing Hughes to Kako. You should be comparing Hughes to Zibanejad because that's where it matches up. Hughes is the Devils' first line center. Zibanejad is the Rangers' first line center. So their first line center has to go up against our first line center. And then what is your third line? Is your third line Capo Caco? No. Like, is
I,
it Lafreniere either? No.
no,
Right? Like that's where it is. Like I'm not saying the Devils have a bad have bad forward depth. I'm not saying that at all. Their team is actually really young. They have 3 young scoring lines, but it's just a little bit different than the Rangers. Like the Rangers' top 2 lines have veteran scorers on there. Like they have established players there. The Devils' top 2 lines are consisting of guys that are younger that are also established, but they're not like veterans yet. Like they haven't sniffed the playoffs yet. Like
yeah.
Palat has played for the play in the playoffs. Timo Meyer has, but like they don't have Panarin, right? They don't have Zibanejad or like Kreider, a guy that's been in the playoffs basically his entire career, right? Like they don't have all those players, so it's a little bit of a different comparison.
I
With
think it's
you know,
just a very bizarre comparison. If Jack Hughes wasn't doing what he's doing, playing at the level he's playing, the Devils wouldn't be where they are.
right?
You should take that as a compliment of like, Jack Hughes is, but I think that's the problem. They almost go back and forth. It's like Jack Hughes is the leader of our team. He's a superstar. He's a this, but we would still be good. Like we're still good everywhere else. Like, yeah, you're good everywhere else. You're going to be in second or first in the Metro. Good for you. But like the comparison is very bizarre. Like the teams themselves, I don't think are comparable. And it's funny because a few years ago because they were the youngest 2 teams. I remember that list coming out. They were the 2 youngest teams in the whole league. And everyone was looking at them like, the Devils, the Rangers, their rebuilds. Let's look at how they're going to make their teams. And the Rangers completely, I won't say outbid or build them, but they did in a sense of yours took about 10 years and ours took not 10 years. But like regardless, they're here now. You know what I mean? Like you're both here like, and of course we're going to banter and we're going to go back and forth and it's all a rivalry and I'm glad that it's back, but like it's just they almost like want to replace the Rangers. That's how I feel. Like Devils fans come to me like, well, we're here now. Okay, well, so are we. Like you're not better. You're not like let's not get carried away because you had one good season and who knows what you'll do in the playoffs. Maybe you'll beat us. Maybe you won't have to, play us first round. Maybe we won't even play each other. I don't whatever it ends up being. It's just a very weird like, well, now we're here. Okay, but the Canes are still here. They've been here for a while. We're still here. Like it's very like okay, now you can join us. Not like
Mm-hmm.
now you can like replace us. So I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm ready to just enjoy the playoffs and try to not get as social media involved as I did with Pittsburgh fans because
Yeah.
they were draining. They were very relentless, and I still would like to end with saying that they are number one in unbearable fan bases in my experience. So, Devils fans, if you would like to be number one in something else, you can continue what you're doing, but it's still Pittsburgh.
You could
Not
try.
yeah. I mean, Pittsburgh have to shut up for a little while. They've been very quiet. On the forefront for many reasons, obviously. But yeah, that's my ranking is Pittsburgh Devils, and then maybe like I don't know the
Mhm.
Islanders Trolls. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
much, but I'm sure they'll come out in the playoffs. So
Yeah, yeah, and it's good for again, it's good for the league. Like you have multiple
it is.
competitive teams, right? Like you go back to like the '90s, you have it's not it's the Devils, the Avalanche, and the Red Wings. Like those are the best teams. Like don't replace one team with the other. Like have a whole bunch of good teams. Like this year let's say okay, so last year the Avalanche won. Maybe this year it's the Bruins, or next year it's the Rangers, and the following year is the Devils. Like that's just gonna keep people tuned in because they want to see how far their team is gonna go,
I
right? It sucks that the Rangers and the Devils had such great seasons. They're both top 10 teams in the league standing. One of them is gonna have to go home in the first round.
yeah. It's I think it's interesting. The Canes, I mean, the Devils can come in first, or they can't. I
They
have
can, yes,
okay.
yes.
Um,
They're 1 point behind the Hurricanes, and they both play tonight.
Yeah, I think it's more interesting because I do think that's the other thing. I do think the Devils could go further than the Canes in the playoffs. I do think the Canes are a little beat up, and I think the Devils could go further. It's just a matter of then if they if they do get stuck playing the Rangers and the Rangers get stuck playing them, however you want to look at it in the first round, it obviously it changes the whole landscape of the Metro because it's like I don't think that the Canes have a team that are going to win. I don't think that they have a team that is gonna, go far. But if they play that, whoever they play in the first round, if it's not the Devil, if it's not the Rangers, um, I don't know how far that they're gonna go.
Mhm.
I don't know. I think it'll be really interesting. Everything will be in place after tonight, and then we can just focus on who we got to play. But
Yeah.
it'll
I'm
be fun.
hoping for Zibanejad to get his 40th goal tonight, and then,
Yeah, that's my hope too. I'm not worried about the Devils game and what place they're gonna come in. I am strictly worried about Zibanejad and his 40th goal. So.
yeah, tonight's Rangers Maple Leafs game is just gonna be like a Mexican standoff,
And
like,
that's
there's
fun.
just nothing.
Fun. The Leafs too now. Like that's a fun game. Like that'll be interesting.
Like,
So
they're teams that, this is not gonna be a physical game at all. I will be very, very surprised if there's more than 20 hits in this game.
yeah,
Like, it's gonna be like the St. Louis game, just trading chances maybe, or a lot of just lull play or
get off
something like
that,
that.
call it a day. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, just stay healthy, coast in the playoffs because this game is meaningless,
Yeah,
basically, because
absolutely.
the Rangers already clinched. The Leafs' first round matchup is against the Lightning. We've known this for a week or two now, maybe. So it's just stay healthy and that's it.
I agree.
All
Couldn't agree.
right. Well, Natalina, thanks so much for joining me. That wraps up the episode. Ice Cold Takes listeners. We'll see you guys next week.